Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
It's me, Egbert, once again. I'm the new owner of this station. I went out and hired the best talk radio consultant, Jeff Allen from News Talk STL, and told him to hire the worst talent he could find. Jeff did exactly as I told him. Ladies and gentlemen, here are Brad and John.
That is right. Okay. Top story. You know who Goldie Hawn is, correct?
Oh, yeah. You like me. No, wait, that was Sally Field.
Sally Field.
I do know who Goldie Hawn is.
Okay, Goldie Hawn.
Was she married to Kurt Russell, or were they just in a long-term relationship?
Well, they still are. I don't know if they're married or not.
Oh, okay.
They obviously live together in L.A. That's part of what this story's about. Goldie Hawn, who gave us Kate Hudson, who is one of my all-time favorite actresses. One of my all-time favorite movies is Almost Famous. You ever seen that movie before?
I don't know if I have.
You need to watch it. Okay. Anyway, story that I read yesterday about her is that her and Kurt were out for dinner. They come back. Their house had been broken into. Okay. That was like a month or so ago. So
and where do they live? Are they in Los Angeles or
Yes,
something?
they live in, I should say that right up front. They live in L.A., okay? And she's at home by herself recently, and she hears like what she hears like a loud boom or something like that. Didn't think much of it, heard it again, went to investigate. Somebody's trying to break into her bedroom. She's got what do you call it? You know what I'm talking about. She's second floor. She's got a second floor bedroom. She's got a balcony. So
balcony. Okay.
I can't even think straight this morning, John. She's got a balcony. Okay. So she's talking about, and you see these stories all the time. So and so's leaving L.A. So and so's leaving L.A. So and so's leaving L.A. Don't you think that this is what I don't understand? Don't you think that if this became a recurrent news story, that the governor and the state representatives and the mayor of Los Angeles and the mayor of the munis in L.A. County, the Hollywoods and the places like that, don't you think they would sit down one day and say, you know, we got a problem and we got to take care of this problem? But it doesn't seem like they give a poop, does it?
No, I don't think so. And, you could gladly point to the fact that these robbers are they're going after people who are affluent. It's kind of like if you're stealing and looting and burning a store. It's just property, Brad. Goldie Hawn wasn't injured. What's the worst that would have happened? She would have had her jewelry stolen. These people probably would have pawned it for bread. They're probably just trying to feed their family, Brad. I don't know why you have to be so cruel about it.
So John is being Mr. Facetious again, right? Because of the fact that these are probably not your low-end, throw a brick through your window and grab your purse off your front seat of your car kind of thieves. These are, and once again, they probably know there's a point in the story I read.
Of course they do.
That she has like some kind of a safe room. And when you think safe room, you're talking about something that has like a substantial door on or something like that. And apparently she's got like her valuable stuff like that. They broke into her safe room. So what does that tell you? That's somebody who knows what the hell they're doing.
They're professional thieves, yeah.
Right. And once again, it's like I hate to use, people say that, it happened to you once, Brad, and you never forget. I had lunch with a banker years ago, lived in Clayton, and nice lady, but a little bit like, well, I live in Clayton. One point in time.
One of those uppity types.
Right, and she said, well, life in Clayton is wonderful. And you know what? I love Clayton, although I think what's happening to Clayton is sort of sad, but it's a whole other story. And she said to me, we don't have crime in Clayton. And I said to her, I told her I work for the police department story. I said, you don't think you have crime in Clayton. The more affluent a neighborhood is, the better the municipality is at covering up the crime because they don't want to tarnish the reputation of that particular area. And,
for sure.
And if you talk to police officers, name me a muni like Frontenac or Clayton or Ladue.
Or
Chesterfield. I mean, I know personally someone who told me a story that they have a house that they're rehabbing in Kirkwood, and I won't say who this person is, and numerous times. The same lady has broken into the house and essentially has essentially tried to essentially take over the house. She's a squatter. And they know her by name, and the police department will not press charges against her. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, what does that tell you? What does that tell you? I mean, back in the day, once again, it's been a long time since I worked for the police department. They were known as, we called them known characters. Or if you watch...
Yeah, exactly. Couldn't you just pick them up and drop them off in the city and say, go see Larry Rice and
John,
don't come back?
I don't know if I ever told you. When I was a young guy, my very first guy that I worked with in the radio business, I was a producer for a Sunday night talk show, the old KSOQ. This is going back a long time ago. And I believe, unfortunately, he's passed away, and I don't mean to besmirch his reputation, but a guy by the name of Lee Langford, who ultimately became the chief of police in Richmond Heights, he was my boss. He did the talk show, and I worked with him, and he was a wonderful guy. I learned so much from him, and to the point where after the show, a lot of times we'd go down to, what was the place down there? The pizza place down there. You'd know as a WashU guy, right in the corner of Big Bend.
Oh, Telania's?
Telania's. We go down to, because Telania's was open till like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
A talk show ran from 10 o'clock Sunday night till 2 o'clock in the Sunday morning. Where do you go to eat at 2:30 in the morning in St. Louis on a Monday morning? There's practically no place. Two things I still remember about. One day, we're walking up to Telania's, and we all took different cars. It's me, Lee, and another guy. We drove up there, and as we're walking up to, Lee's, just like Mr. Nice Guy, and we're kidding around. He was a very funny guy, and we're kidding around, and all of a sudden, his switch flipped, and he went into a different mode, and his face got very stern, and he stopped talking to us, and he sped up his pace, and then he picked up his pace, and he broke into a run, and he tackled a guy. I mean, right there on Big Bend. I mean, literally tackled him.
Is it somebody that he recognized?
Exactly, a guy that they had a warrant out for. I mean, he literally.
Wow.
And the interesting thing was, as Lee starts approaching him, the reason that Lee tackled him was this guy looked up him, their eyes met. And the guy said, "Oh my God, I know who that is," because he'd had all these interactions with the Richmond Heights Police Department with Lee. So the guy starts to run away, and Lee had enough of a lead on him to the point where he tackled him, got him down on the ground. This was pre-cell phone era. He says, "Go inside, have him call the police." Nobody
was standing there with their phone recording it.
Right, nobody was standing there with their phone recorded. We waited. I think Tulane is actually in the city, isn't it? Isn't it like one side of...
You know what, though? Now that I think about it, was it maybe Pointer's Pizza?
No, it was Tulane's.
Okay.
Isn't that on the corner?
Yeah, because Tulane's is it Skinker and Forest Park?
That's what it is, Skinker. Okay, so that would have been technically in the city, because isn't Skinker the dividing line? The west side of Skinker's Clayton, the east side of Skinker's City, St. Louis.
Correct.
So the city police, whoever the police came, won, and they grabbed him, put him in cuffs, off he went. So then we went inside and had our pizza. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy just never stops. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, I'm all over the road this morning, okay? Two more things I want to talk about this morning, if you'll indulge me, okay?
Of course.
And you know a lot about this, and I want your opinion on this. I read this article yesterday. Once again, I have this stupid journalism degree, two of them which are worthless, okay? And this is off of yahoo.com. Phony news portals surpass U.S. newspaper sites, researchers say.
Nice.
Partisan websites masquerading as media outlets now outnumber American newspaper sites, a research group that tracks misinformation said Tuesday, highlighting a local news crisis in a year of high-stakes elections. Hundreds of sites mimicking news outlets, many of them powered by artificial intelligence, have cropped up in recent months, fueling an explosion of polarizing or false narratives that are stoking alarm as the race for the White House intensifies. And I've never heard this term before. At least 1,265 pink slime outlets, and they say those are politically motivated.
And that's named after I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's named after the was that they would make chicken nuggets out of? What is that one?
Yeah. The food substance.
Right. Politically motivated websites that represent themselves as independent local news outlets have been identified, the U.S.-based research group NewsGuard said in a report. Now, and it goes in, it talks about all these different sites and blah, 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 blah. And then at the very end of the article, it gives let me go see if I can find, maybe it wasn't in the article. There was a link I clicked on. and States News Services is there. Isn't that the one that does the Missouri Independent?
Well, that's called States Newsroom. Did they use States Newsroom by name?
Let me see if I can find it. I clicked on a link.
Because I doubt that, first of all, I doubt any mainstream media publication will call out States Newsroom or any progressive outlet. Like, they're not going to criticize liberals for being liberals.
Well, and when I did some research, and I thought I still had the link here, those sites include a network of 167 Russian disinformation sites that NewsGuard said were linked to John Mark Dugan, a U.S. farmer law enforcement officer who fled to Moscow. Other sites are backed by conservatives as well as influential left-leaning groups such as Metric Media, Courier Newsroom, and States Newsroom. Isn't that the one?
Oh, yeah, that is. You're right about that, Brad.
So they called them out.
And would you do me a favor and send me a link to that?
I will most happily. As a matter of fact, let me copy it, sent to you right now. Your opinion on this?
Yeah, so I think it's absolutely true. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that these websites purport to be use AI, and they're essentially just, if you can game the algorithm, or I guess I should say use the algorithm rules to capture traffic. You know, if you use an MSN browser, you're going to get the Kansas City Star version of a story hosted on MSN, and MSN is just going to use their network to get as much traffic as possible. I guess the most creative thing I've seen, over the years has been if a Democratic, let's say, state Senate campaign or even a statewide campaign in some states have created their own newspaper-looking sites to amalgamate information and then work in a steady stream of, negative opposition research. So it's really run by political campaigns, but if you're just Googling a candidate, it looks like you've gone to a news site. So that's intentionally deceptive, but candidates have been doing things like that for decades.
Well, now you've mentioned before the Missouri Independent is
Sure.
essentially a politically backed company, correct? By this state.
Yeah, I mean they're supported by progressive nonprofits, that's for sure. And they have some really good content creators there that are progressive they essentially run a shadow government to criticize Republicans, whether that's Governor Parson, or whether that's the Freedom Caucus. They're a good dumping ground for negative information about Republicans, for sure.
Interesting. Okay. But see, here's interesting. This is a main line. This is Yahoo News. I thought it was interesting that they're calling this out. And this to me, this is a real serious issue. That what has happened is, if you look, and it's the same thing that we have to deal with the broadcasters. News operations, be they print, broadcast, for decades, even for centuries, maybe a couple centuries, relied on the model that they would go out, they would hire lots of news people, they would go out and they would print a paper, then ultimately they would do radio newscasts, which you had starting in the 20s and 30s, and then obviously in the 40s and 50s you have the growth of TV news. And they would make those operations funding by selling advertising. Well, along comes all the digital stuff, and a lot of the money that used to go to traditional sources, like I guess people would call old media, whatever they want to call it, it becomes to the point where it's tough to sell advertising. Trust me, I know. And I gave the example the other day of the fact that nobody listens to radio. I'm in an operating room situation with doctors and nurses who are listening to Casey, okay? So nobody listens to radio anymore. Don't tell me that, okay? But what's happened is that so many of these outlets that you see have political biases. I mean, there are websites here in the St. Louis area that purport themselves to be news. I could get into a situation where I don't really necessarily want to talk about this because I don't know 100% that I should know more about this, but I know certain Facebook pages that are put up by certain people who are politicians, and they don't want to claim that they have anything to do with this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course I do.
And I guess it's bothersome to me. Now,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that piece was by AFP, which is a global news agency, so it's not written by Yahoo. Yahoo is distributing it, much like Yahoo would distribute news from the Kansas City Star or others. So what you're saying is that Yahoo News just essentially reprinted that letter, which is from AFP, which is a global, essentially a news wire.
Okay, last but not least, I know we're a little bit over time. I was out yesterday afternoon driving along I-70. I saw something very unusual. I saw jetliners south of the hotels of the airport. Okay, now people are going to go, yeah, and your point is? The way most of the jetliners, the jets come into Lambert is they come in from the west or they come in from the east, and typically they are north of I-70. These planes were all south of I-70 because they were using the new runway, which you hardly ever see used.
Oh, nice.
And two of the planes coming in with Southwest Airlines planes. Now, keep in mind, they were landing to the west, which means once they land, once they finish their slowdown and they pull off onto the taxiway, they are 5 miles from the terminal. And being that especially Southwest is on the opposite end of the airport, what sense does that make? Why are they using that runway for Southwest? Does that make any sense at all to you, John?
It doesn't make any sense to me. I do know that I would flag for you, Brad, that the FAA Central Region Administrator was hosted by Greater St. Louis, Inc. And you know what, Brad? I just saw this. There's going to be $5 billion of economic activity every year thanks to the new airport. No thanks to cynics and critics like you, Brad. $5 billion more each year thanks to that airport renovation, Brad. And I don't know why you don't support it. I don't know why you hate the St. Louis region.
John, I don't hate the St. Louis region, but let me just typify how I feel about that report. That's bullschmutz. That's all there is.
Hey, get that off the governor's shirt. He deserves better, Brad.
It's bullschmutz. That's what that is. I don't care what anybody says. Okay, I'm going to go back to bed. I'm sorry.
All right. Good, Brad. You deserve a little bit of rest. And we will see everybody on Friday.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?